Hello and welcome to AV Today podcast once again. It's a pleasure to meet you again after a couple of months, and the journey has been good. And we want to bring you inspiring stories from our industry veterans who's been there and who's seen past, present, and who have a vision for future. And today in our episode, we have a very special guest who's been with a very popular consumer electronic company, and who's from a lower level, he has grown to a level of COO. And then out of his passion, he gave birth to a new brand, okay, which happens to be very popular now. And he is very passionate about branding, marketing, and very enthusiastic. And later he ventured into integration on the residential AV, and they've also tried their hand in professional AV. And he's none other than Mr. Manmohan Ganesh from ProFX. It's my pleasure to invite him to the show. Welcome, Mr. Manmohan.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you in our show. So let me start with a little brief about the BPL because today I see a lot of people think that ProFX is a BPL company, ex BPL, and now it is called as ProFX. So I want to know
So,
what it
well,
is.
I think people say that because many of us, the initial team that started ProFX, built it from ground up, were all ex BPL employees. So, working in BPL, which was the largest Indian manufacturer of consumer electronics and appliances back in the day, company which had 10,000 employees, 28 factories, and really they built the reputation for quality in India. So, that entire uh, make in India, what we talk about today, that story originated way back in the 90s where BPL was a leader in this space. And when BPL got out of the consumer business, that was a time then people, I mean, me and maybe a few like minded people wanted to do something which continued to emulate that high quality that BPL, had that reputation, quality, and all the good values that BPL had instilled in us. We wanted to continue, but raise the bar. So that was how ProFX began. ProFX is a separate company, it's independent, but because we all are so passionate about BPL and the foundation that BPL gave us, so I know people do say that it's a BPL company. We rarely correct them because it doesn't really matter. We are a product of BPL. Yeah.
True, I understand. So, what's the story behind ProFX? How
So,
did it evolve?
interestingly enough, BPL being a largest at the time manufacturer of TVs and the company that actually introduced VCR to India, the company that introduced CD players to India, a lot of products. BPL was a pioneer in the space, the first company to introduce home theaters in India also. But that was a consumer product, right? So it was for the consumer segment. Consumer products eventually, it's all about pricing and it's a box selling.
Mm.
The inspiration for me was to actually raise the bar. How can I actually sell a good product and sell it really well? So the idea was to continue being in the consumer electronics. I like to call it entertainment electronics. After all, AV, should be perceived as entertainment.
Entertainment.
And so entertainment electronics, uh, I thought that if we could really have that kit glove service, that really VIP, experience, both for at the pre and the post purchase experience, that was the inspiration. So I said, instead of selling a TV, can I sell more than a TV? Can it be something a large size viewing experience, like a projector or a video wall, products that were there at the time? Can I look at sound beyond just the regular sound? Can I look at surround sound? Can I look at spatial sound, virtual sound? So those were the things that were inspiring to us. And to be able to sell the product well meant really having a differentiated buying experience for every customer. So that was the idea that I had. Started meeting people and trying to gauge acceptance for a premium AV experience and an AV product and experience. And unfortunately, at the time, people didn't even understand what it meant to have, say, audiophile sound or high fidelity experience and things like that. So when we told them that this is going to be better than regular sound, the first reaction was, it's probably going to be like professional, or is it going to have a lot of effects? So everybody kept saying professional in effects. And I said, maybe that's what we should actually look at calling this brand.
The key terms.
Yes. And we merged professional effects and turned it into ProFX. Right. And it was literally, one of those spur of the moment kind of things. And even the logo was sketched by me in literally 10 seconds.
Beautiful.
And that finally became the brand. And it was interesting that after we created the brand, there were so many people who said that, oh, ProFX, I know it used to be, I used to live abroad in Europe. I once visited a ProFX store in Europe. I said, like, really? So I don't know, for some reason, people got the feeling that this was an international brand. And this was something that, already had a reputation built into it, which is interesting. But since then, now ProFX is reasonably well known in the premium residential AV space, and even in specialized AV applications in the corporate space.
So initially you started off as a product company, right?
We did.
You brought in some inspiring products.
That's right. So when we first started, the thought was, can we actually make a speaker and make it better? So we had a team that we put together, and we designed a speaker series. We first called that speaker range called the ProFX Hallmark.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized that Hallmark was, some people couldn't even pronounce that. So then we said, okay, we'll just call it the H series. So we had a range of speakers, lovely speakers. In fact, we over-engineered the speakers so much so that 20 years later, we've not had one single failure of any of the speakers, though we sold thousands of them. And the attention to detail was so much that even, when you have a hi-fi speaker, you usually put the speaker on spikes so that you have minimum contact with the floor surface.
Mm-hmm.
Even the spikes were gold-plated. So it could have just been any metal spikes, but they were gold-plated. That was the extent to which, so the internal cabling was of the best quality, even that's within the speaker. The cones were made of Kevlar so that they were indestructible. No cockroach could eat through a Kevlar cone.
Lovely.
Or any kind of damage would never happen to it. And then we had all the connectors were gold-plated. And, even gold-plated, you can have a 5-micron gold-plated or a 50-micron. We would actually spec the best so that the product would not ever lose value.
Mm.
Unfortunately, despite the great acceptance, and we sold a lot of that, but we could not really invest on innovation beyond the initial 2-3 ranges of products that we came out, because R&D is very expensive. And then if you're going to look at India only being a market, it's difficult, right? If you have global market, then it's different. Mm. But we were a very, very small company that time, limited resources. We didn't really have any way to have any kind of outreach to global markets. So we slowly pivoted the business from being a manufacturing business to actually being more a destination. Today, if somebody asks me what is ProFX, I would call ProFX as the destination for great AV and automation, right? So the destination means you get a great range of products, a wide variety of products, amazing quality, sold by people who know the subject really well, installed by people who are professionals, who have the skill set to do a great job, to have a neat and tidy installation, and then back everything with a call center that's available to a customer anytime, post-sales service centers of our own. So I ensured that the pre-sales, the sales, and the post-sale experience, we set the benchmark in India.
Lovely.
In fact, interestingly, a lot of what we've done, I would say, in terms of the kind of experience centers we created, the website that we have, the catalogs that we created for the products, are better than what is done by some of the principal brands that we represent in India. Right? So we have times where a social media post that we might have created is copied by our international partner. The catalogs that we've made, they pick up quantities of it because globally they've never actually made a catalog of that quality. and various things. I mean, even when it comes to the expertise of our service centers, we get calls saying that, how did you guys solve this problem? We have this similar experience in, say, Spain or Italy or wherever, where an amplifier is misbehaving for some reason, but you guys have sorted it out in India. So we teach them how to sort it out. So that's the level of expertise that we've managed to gain in these 2 decades of being in the business. And it feels good to actually have built a reputation and created something that we are all proud of.
So after building the products, you wanted to get into installation on
Yeah.
the residential side. So how did you get into that space?
So we built a product. If you create a product in India, bigger than the challenge of getting consumer acceptance is the challenge of getting a dealer to promote your product. So we found that every time we tried to sell a product, uh, a customer wants to buy it, but you need a counter you need a place where the dealer may buy the product from you. But the dealers were hesitant because they only want to promote an international product. So we had to look at creating our own stores because we never got the support of a reseller. So we created our own stores in Bangalore, then Chennai, then Mumbai, and few cities like that. And that's when we actually differentiated ourselves from the rest. So people came into a much nicer store than they were used to. They spoke to people who are very knowledgeable about the product, very friendly, accessible 7 days a week. You'll be amazed, 17, 18 years ago, if you walked into a typical residential AV dealer counter and you asked for a demo, they would charge you money for it.
Oh,
They would charge you between 100 and 500 rupees, and they'd refund the money if you bought the product.
okay.
Now, those seemed absolutely ridiculous. I mean, for
True.
us, we would go to a customer's house, do a site visit, give a home demo without obligation to buy. We told people that we will take every effort to make sure that your experience in dealing with us, even if you are a customer or you eventually not a customer, that it would be absolutely the best. There was nothing else that could be compared in India. So that was what inspired us, and people started realizing that the installation process was professional, the post-sales process was professional, and then we wanted to ensure that no customer really has a product fail and them not getting service post that. So we said we'll build our own service infrastructure. And today we have the largest service infrastructure, 26 service centers across the country. Nobody has anything close to that. And so any product which is sold by us in any of the major cities, in fact, even in some of the smaller cities like Coimbatore or in Ahmedabad or Pune, we have service everywhere. So we ensure that the product is well taken care of. And that's a big difference between us and everybody else.
So did you face any competition from the international brands like Bose or any other brand?
So, yes, so the main competition we always faced is more with, I would say, more to do with the brand equity that they enjoyed. They had this blind faith that the consumer had in their products, right? And so when you compete and you tell somebody that, hey, we are an Indian brand or a homegrown brand, and slowly we were partnering with international brands. By the time brands like Denon, Kef were the early brands that partnered with us, they realized that what we were bringing in terms of expertise, the type of showrooms, the type of service was what they wanted in a partner. So they started tying up with us. Eventually, Poke Audio and more brands did partner with us. So we did face competition from some of the international brands who had their own retail infrastructure, who created some amount of service. But some of those brands no longer have their own retail or their own service. So that speaks volumes. So we survived and they didn't.
Yeah. So that's a great difference, certainly.
Yeah.
So can you tell us your experience about the residential integration part? How did it start and how
Yes.
did?
So our initial focus was purely on residential AV. And post that, now in the last 10 years, it's also AV and automation.
Okay.
Right. So when we started with AV only, it was mainly home theater and hi-fi. People who wanted, of course, Indians love movies. So, and the opportunity is huge, I believe, because of the growing affluent class in this country. and large homes, and people like to have a theater or a media room. So we saw a great opportunity. We believed that if we tap into it correctly and we do the right things, a reputation would carry us on and keep building our brand. And we've been right with that. So the initial experience was, yes, it was quite challenging, because we were talking about days where before you had OTT platforms like Netflix and Prime, customers would buy a home theater and not have any content to watch on it.
That
Right.
was a
So
challenge.
we used to actually make efforts to say that how can I actually do something for this customer? They've invested money, but they really don't have, content. We started having these little gift baskets. We would present them with DVDs. We would present them with, a little goodie basket with the microwave popcorn and DVDs and, few things like that, when they bought a new system. And then we realized that our customers finally started becoming our greatest marketeers. They were telling people that, this is such a wonderful company, and they've done this for me and that for me. And, I, 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 I should I have a problem using the product? Should I forget how to operate something? Just they're available, just a phone call away. And we never wanted to ever dilute that experience. So today we are open 365 days a year. Anybody calls anytime, even sometimes post midnight, our people are available to them. They have a party and suddenly something goes off and they don't know why our people are available to them. So we really take that extra effort. At the same time, we also realize that the Indian consumer is one of the most demanding in the world, not just residential, corporate, everywhere. In India, more than any other country, people think that, okay, if you're being helpful, I will take advantage. Right? So we have several instances where our team has gone to install, say, a home theater, and what should have actually taken a day, and our team is visited the next day also, and the day after. And when I asked them, what took you so long, they said, we finished our work in a day, but the client wanted some help fixing 15 odd paintings. So they wanted us, because we have a drill and we can fit it up and we will do all of that. And there have been instances where we've installed a client's imported kitchen because it comes in a modular form and they wanted some help, and we've had to do it. And I know it's like, it seems absurd, but the client just insisted, said, I've given you so much business now, this is the least you can do for me.
Oh my God.
So people start asking for all kinds of things. They expect that, at a snap of a finger, somebody will attend to them. Very often it's nothing to do with their product. They'll come and say that, I have a CD, but it's got stuck in the CD player. Help me take it out. So like, why did the CD player get stuck? Oh, my kid was playing, that had chocolate on its hand, so they put it in. We have cases where, the dog has scratched out the woofer on the speaker. Now sort it out. So whatever the customer may ask from us, within certain limits, we actually take that effort and do for them. And that now has helped build a reputation. Not that, yes, we're pushovers or anything like that, but the point is that when we do something, we do it professionally, and we don't really look at the watch. We don't really crib about small things. The question is about keeping a customer happy. So while we built that, and the business started growing well, very proud of how we were able to establish in a reasonably short amount of time. But then we realized that the customer was asking for more. If you have a home theater, you have say a projector, you have an amplifier, you have the speakers, you have maybe a set-top box, you have a DVD player. So eventually there were like 5 or 6 remotes in front of the customer. And that started becoming a huge pain point, because women in the house found it very, very difficult to operate their equipment. And then we realized that, why don't we look at automating all of this?
True.
So we actually partnered with brands like Crestron, later on even with Lutron. So especially Crestron helped us integrate all the AV equipment, dim the lights, close the curtain, turn on the AC, basically the press of a button, right? So that really helped make the experience, the user experience, that much better. And eventually we started getting inquiries for doing up larger homes. And I mean, we are amongst the few companies who have done homes of more than 1 lakh square feet, right? Automating everything from security systems, lighting, blinds, thermostats, sprinkler systems, uh, timed background music, the entire AV experience, all of it, whatever people wanted. And today, we are one of the few who actually target the HNI segment, very, very demanding, huge homes. Everything needs to be done in a very, very specialized manner. We take extra trouble, extra effort to ensure that the customer experience is outstanding. We look at We've been a little forward thinking in some ways, that we look at how technology may change and how we could provision for that. It could be, as simple in the early days as, having a 2-wire connectivity to your set-top box, because we knew, even when set-top boxes had just come in, that the future set-top boxes would have 2 cables, so that it would have a tuner built in, so it would be able to record programs while you're watching another program. So it needed 2-cable connectivity. Now, in a home, if you don't plan for that, eventually you have to drill another hole, or have another external visible wire, which we wanted to avoid. We also looked at things like when we were automating homes. It's like, okay, there's a refrigerator in that house. Should we actually look at a Cat6 cable? Because today's refrigerator may not be smart, but tomorrow's may be AI powered, which will automatically order your milk when your milk is over. So people may say that, yes, you have Wi-Fi for that. Yeah, but we're looking at a kitchen, it's high wet surface, a lot of stone, granite, places where mobile signal may not be great.
True.
So we started looking at, they may seem small, but when you actually start looking at these things from a very technical angle, we started realizing even things like, when mobile signals go from 4G to 5G, being ultra high frequencies, will they go through very thick walls? So should we look at boosters within the house? Nothing to do with our business. But we started advising customers to that level. And we always do. We keep continuing to do that. In fact, we make extra effort to try to understand future technologies and see if there's any way that we can provision for it early for a customer. Now, a customer doesn't pay for that, but maybe years later they realize that, wow, these guys had thought of it and nobody else did. Because that's typically the problem. Today, if you call a plumber considers plumbing or the piping for only the 3 taps that you may want in your bathroom. They may never look at something beyond that. But we are trying to think beyond. And so that's always been our motto of trying to do something with a little bit of extra, and that's the extra free. That's the the magic sauce that we give with our product.
The differentiation.
Yes.
So, but how is this residential AV landscape, Mr. Manu?
So the opportunity is huge.
Okay.
Right. India is one of the few countries where the affluent class will be 100 million by the year 2027. So we're talking about the affluent people, which is just 0.001% literally of the demographic. But the opportunity is larger than many European countries, like the entire country.
Okay.
The challenge is not everybody necessarily wants AV, right? You may have a multi-millionaire who doesn't want any of this, because Indians unfortunately don't know how to enjoy enough. Right? Everybody works hard. Family time is important, but personal enjoyment, relaxation has always been, something that's pushed aside.
The new generation, I think, is
the new generation. Again, I don't really know how much. Well, the gratification stuff is important, but whether they're really looking at having something. I mean, the new generation today, their priorities are very, very different. Like the old generation says, "Oh, I have money, I shall buy a luxury car." New generation says, "I don't want a car, I'll just take a Uber or an Ola." So that's very, very different. The old generation, those who buy a great, a nice big bungalow or villa or whatever, say, this room is going to be my entertainment party room. I will have a projector or a big screen. I will have surround sound. I'll do all of that and have nice, comfortable chairs. And everybody enjoys that. But the newer people say, oh, I'm fine with a headphone. I think it's a temporary phase, because eventually, when you compare the experience, you definitely go in for the big room if you can afford it.
True.
So there are differences, and but the opportunity still is huge, and so there is a huge segment of society which will be able to afford these products. Newer homes are getting better and better. people are finding the importance of space in a home, barring some cities like Bombay where you don't have that luxury. But otherwise, in many places, space is something that people would like to have. Um, I think slowly there's this culture being set in that, by the way, I don't want to work on a Saturday, or I actually want to have some time for myself. So once that happens, we see more and more people will consume these products. Uh, the source of entertainment is unlimited today. There are so many OTT platforms. You can watch a movie literally this the week it's released. Or if you make bigger investments, you can watch it the same day if you have something like a Cube server, etc. So I think the landscape, the opportunity, everything is great. The challenge remains in awareness. So awareness, a lot of people still don't know what makes a better product, right? People still think consumer electronic brands, I bought a TV, same brand is offering me speakers, it must be good. They don't understand that's a little plastic speaker can never deliver the kind of fidelity or spatial experience that a real proper AV speaker can do. So our task ahead is to keep improving the awareness levels, which means increasing the number of touch points for customers, which means improving our distribution. Today, ProFX represents several international brands, and we have a kind of hybrid business model. We have our own stores, but our own stores are more like experience centers where it's not about seeing a lot of products, but it's really seeing the product in the right environment and enjoying that and seeing the sophistication and the grandeur of all of that, seeing the quality of its installation, and really giving customers something to dream about, something to be desired. So that's what we do with our own stores, but we also have 700 plus reseller partners. So we have the largest network of reseller partners in India and across the length and breadth of the country. So there's, barring a few places in the Northeast where we don't have representation for other logistical challenges, but otherwise we have covered most of the country. And these products are demonstrated there, they're displayed, demonstrated. We train people. So we have an in-house training manager who actually travels around the country and teaches people how to sell the product, how to install the product, and how to ensure that the customer knows how to use it properly. So we do all of that. And yes, we are hoping that this investment in surveys, in the network, so we have regional offices that manage this network. And we have, so this effort, we believe, has already been recognized and appreciated by the partnering brands that we work with. So we've always, as I mentioned earlier, worked with brands like Denon and Kef and Poke Audio and Definitive. But in the recent years, just a year ago, Harman Kardon came to us, Harman, the group. And so the JBL brand, the Revel brand, they have entrusted us to distribute for them.
Okay.
We are working now with certain other brands like Panasonic who've come to us saying that to represent some of their professional display products. We've just started working with BenQ, distributing the products initially only in Mumbai, but we'll soon take it up to maybe other locations as well. So this has been a good start. People recognize the effort, and the opportunity is definitely there.
So, are there enough people to address this market need in the residential AV in India?
I believe if you were to do just a number count, I think there are a lot of people today. Are they all good at what they do? No. Right. So the thing is, there are a lot of people. There's very little entry barrier to this kind of business. Somebody has a small little space and said, "I'll keep 10 speakers and I call myself a AV retailer." But there's a lot more that goes into this, right? It's about selling the right product. It's about giving a honest configuration to a customer. It's not about, okay, I have stock of these 6 speakers. I will make a mix and match of this and somehow convince the customer that this is the best product to buy. A lot of that happens too often. People say, "Oh, I bought a home theater of say Kef," and then you go there and it's like there's a left and right speaker are Kef, and the center speaker is a different brand, and the rear speaker is a different brand. The customer's just been fooled. So this kind of thing, eventually, I know things balance out. So people who sell this kind of products are eventually weeded out of the market. But there are a lot of people who are doing a great job also. So the people we have partnered with are all doing a great job. They made efforts, they made investments in space, in training their employees, in displaying products, and then offering the support to those customers. So all of that is going in the right direction, I feel.
So
And
people who really provide proper service and educate the customer
yes,
has a long way to go in this
yes.
market,
So
right?
there is, yes, there are some people are getting there, but there are a lot more people who are making that attempt. There are a lot of consumer electronic people, retailers, consumer electronics, who are typically selling an appliance or a washing machine or a refrigerator. Today also want to sell these speakers. I think that's where the challenge is.
Mm.
So some of the big chain retailers have attempted it. You won't see these products in a big chain retailer.
Okay.
That's because they've made attempts, they've made investments, they've burnt their fingers. And because I think a chain retailer expects a consumer to walk in, you convince them, and they walk out with that product. But they don't realize that in this business, it's not as simple as that. No one solution suits everybody.
Mm.
Everybody's homes are different. Somebody has a large room, but it's cluttered with a lot of furniture, so there's no place to keep a product. Some people have a very small room, and they need to have a product which is going to be wall mounted or in ceiling, which means it needs to be specially wired because you don't want ugly cabling, which means there could be windows and doors and archways. There are challenges where people have a room, but there's too much of light coming in, so that the experience with a projector is not great. They have curtains, but that's still, curtains means it's an absorbing material. So you have one side of the room which has windows where there are curtains. So that is more absorbent than the other side of the room, which means your surround experience will never be perfect, right? So there are so many of those things that we notice. And so it's not so simple. You can't just walk into, oh, this retail chain has 100 stores. These guys must be really good at what they do. They're good at selling a washing machine or a TV or a fridge, but not at something that requires a customized solution for a client where you understand, you plan. Often you have to work with an interior designer, an architect. You have to work sometimes with the builder, because how do I hide these conduits? How do I ensure that the room sounds in a particular way? A lot of today modern building material doesn't work well with AV products, because granite and glass, which is typically used in all these luxury villas, are horrendous because it causes so much of echo. Even a shiny granite floor. If you have a dark room and you're watching a projected image on a screen, you will see that image, and then you will see the same reflection of that image on the floor. Granite. Right? And that's a huge distraction. There are, the placement of a door in a room. So you're in a home theater room, you have a nice big screen, nice comfortable chairs, but you have a door in, say, the front part of the room. And every time somebody wants to come in or somebody's getting a call, they walk out, they're walking past you on the space. They're basically blocking the projected or casting a shadow on the projected surface. You have a maid servant bringing in a cup of coffee or a glass of beer, again walking right past everybody, huge distraction. So we try to advise people on doing it right. Now we are training our dealers on doing it right. There are, of course, many international organizations that also have training programs for these AV integrators and things like that, which they definitely do. But we try to, I think, train people in the context of India. I don't think any American person is training a Indian AV integrator on how do you manage a room if there's a maid servant is walking in every 20 minutes. they don't have that type of situation at all. So we look at all of that.
I understand. But do architects approach you at the building stage?
So, yes, now there are a growing number of architects and interior decorators who realize the importance of bringing in professionals. And they come to us, we work on the entire design. And right in the beginning, it's like, if I'm automating the house, what kind of lighting are we going to use? Because if it's going to be a DALI-based lighting versus just a face cut lighting, is it an incandescent light? So, you may have a traditional light fixture which needs only 2 cables, right? It's literally, you're just turning on and off that light, versus a dimmable light which may require 3 cables, or if it's a DALI-based light, it will require 4 cables, or if it's a color changing light, it requires even more. So that if it's not planned in the beginning, the client can never have that perfect experience. So early days, we always have a challenge. They come to us too late. But now that is changing. So now right in the beginning, which means again, it's a long process of selling, because when they come to us at a design stage, the construction and the interior may take another 3 years beyond that. So there's a lot of patience and handholding required for us to be involved in a project for 3 years. But uh, that's how it has to be done, if it has to be done properly. Internationally, they have an advantage because the house building or an interior process is really, a matter of months. In few cases, it
Correct.
can extend, but it is. In the corporate side, yes, there's a big advantage because no company who's building a new office or a new retail store or a restaurant or a pub is going to pay 6 months, 1 year of rent before they actually open their thing. So they want everything to be done in weeks.
As fast
So
as
that
possible.
as fast as possible. So that does pose it does have a great advantage. But the residential side requires a different mentality. And often it's also about dealing with, you have an interior designer who has a certain kind of requirement. And then you have the owners of the place who may think differently also. They will come and say, this is what I want. Sometimes between the parents and the children in the house, they
I was
have they
coming to
have
that.
they have different opinions, right? The kids say, I want a bigger screen, and the parents say, no, 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 we don't want it so big. And the kids say, I want more subwoofers, I want more bass and punch. Sometimes it's between the wife and the husband. They have a different requirement, and I would like something and I don't want something. So we have to manage all those things. I mean, it's interesting. It is like if they would probably have the same amount of agreement or disagreement if they were buying furniture also. So that's part of the game, and we are happy to be of service to them.
And I also heard that the margins are much higher in the residential AV compared to the Pro AV. Is
So
it
in the
true?
Pro AV space, there could be an element of truth to that.
Okay.
Again, I think for the kind of value and the service that everybody provides in India, I think everybody is underpaid.
Okay.
I personally believe that. And unfortunately, yes, I mean, India being a developing country, there are certain things like labor costs, etc. People assume should be little or nothing, right? People rarely want to pay for certain things. They think you have sold a product, why should I pay you for the service? But that is changing. Today, if you're getting a house painted, the cost of the painter will be more than the paint,
Correct.
right? So the labor is going to cost more. And when we tell a client that, I have to be involved with your project for 2 years or 3 years because you've come to us at such a design stage, and that means attending monthly meetings or visiting sites and supervising the cabling and doing a lot of things, it's 2-3 years of effort. So we should be paid, say, 10% just for that. People say, no, that's too much. For labor, why should I pay that much? So when you look at it, yes, there is more margin for sure, but there's a greater amount of time and involvement involved. So if that being the case, I would say that you don't really earn that much more. Uh, but yeah, it does feel good at the time of the sale, but then there's that much of work involved.
So on the paper, it's different than the experience.
Exactly.
So how did you come into the Pro AV side?
So again, that's an interesting story. So we have been fortunate enough to actually have many marquee customers, right? So people came to us where they really wanted to recognize a superior. I mean, they recognized us for our superior experience and the superior service and a product offering. So we started getting calls from real top end HNIs, many cases industrialists. In certain cases, we were identified by their companies saying that, okay, our chairman of our company is building a new house and we need real professional who can give us CAD drawings, who can give us specifications, schematic drawings, who will follow a time schedule, who will give absolute top-end installation, who will give post-sales service. We are one of the few people who check all the boxes. And when we actually did give that service to those clients, later the same people, being those chairmen or managing directors or C-suite executives, they came and said, this is not what I have in my office. My office, the experience is horrible, but you guys did a great job at home. So we were getting introduced to corporate projects by residential customers. And so that's how we got in very high-end projects. We were given the first introduction really by the topmost people in those companies. And we slowly built it from there. And while there is tremendous competition in the corporate side, but people have understood that if it's a discerning project, it needs some specialized service. I'm talking about things like, say, experience centers. That's an art. It's not only about creating, It's not only about installing, say, LED screens or projectors and sound, but it's about creating that perfect experience. When somebody walks in, how will the room behave? Will the lights, dim down automatically? Will the image switch on? Will the sound, pan around the room? Will people get goosebumps, or when they experience that? We've actually worked on many of those things, and we've done it well. We got nominated for several international awards. We got recognized it in international magazines, and that has actually helped us build a reputation. So we got called by more and more customers in that space. Then of course, there are other kinds. I mean, anything in terms of AV, non-residential, we also do. It could be a restaurant, it could be a pub, it could be a chain of outlets. We don't really necessarily look at it being a big value project or or a mid value. Even if it's small, but if we find that there's an opportunity to impress a customer and have an ongoing business, we are for that.
Very nice. Talking about our culture in our Indian AV, so there are a lot of things which are happening. Some international brands coming in, people switching over, and we have a shortage of talent. And so, what are your thoughts about the future of AV? How are we going to have better corporate or professional experiences in a market? Because when I remember you mentioning in one of the conversations that in other countries like Japan, when people apply for a job, this company calls the previous company and say that we actually offer less, so that if he's
Yes,
really passionate about our company, so let him join. So they maintain that kind of a transparency
true.
and very professionalism, but we don't see that happening in
Yes.
India.
Unfortunately, in India, I think the industry doesn't understand the need and the importance of cooperation. And there is also a great extent of desperation, which is completely unnecessary. If companies cooperate, support each other. So today, I mean, clients take advantage, of course. They have a project, they'll call 10 potential vendors and use one against the other and keep beating the price down. Now, there should be some point where somebody realizes that there's no way we can make it cheaper and cheaper, because beyond a certain level, it's compromise. So sadly enough, today, two things are happening. One is people actually accept jobs even at a loss, hoping that in the future they will get some kind of AMC contract and they will recover that loss. And I think it's really sad. There's no other service in the world where you pay less for the service, hoping that I'll recover that thing, unless it's of course a printer cartridge, right? So that's a very unfortunate thing, because what is the guarantee that the client will continue working with that person even for that AMC? May or may not happen. So taking these so-called forward calls and taking it at a loss is going to be bad for the industry, because if things at some point don't work out, some of these organizations will eventually go bankrupt, and there is a cascading effect to the number of people affected by that, right? So you may not be able to pay your suppliers, your vendors, your employees, and a lot of people get into trouble because the client took this dangerous decision of selling a solution below cost. So that's one thing. Another thing which I notice is there are people who try to take advantage of the situation by quoting less, but the entire solution is a compromise solution. So what is on paper and what is actually sold sometimes are different. There are devices where the external portion, or the front of house, if I can call it that, is of the brand that has been recommended, but the at the back end level or within the AV rack, some of the products are not that. And that is not good, for the industry. The reputation is badly affected. People think that, oh, these guys are cheats, and they will mix and match and they will not give the actual product. So that's a very, very sad situation. I think if the industry cooperates, if everybody supports each other, ensures that we don't drop prices beyond a certain level, there's no point of stealing orders from each other. The opportunity is huge. Honestly, there is no organization, and I'm talking about organization, I'm not really talking about anywhere where there's like an office at least involved, which can operate today without a meeting room, without a conferencing facility, in whatever form. It may be just a simple laptop with a little speaker, but if it's a more number of people, you require something. Even if it's a conferencing bar, you need a display, you need some kind of AV solution. So there are a lot of things that everybody requires.
Yeah.
If integrators protect each other,
Mm.
and it's about actually having some self-respect.
True.
There is a certain service, there is a certain cost involved. There are certain payment terms which are reasonably, reasonably acceptable payment terms. But beyond that, doesn't make any sense. If people are sincere and do it correctly, I think the industry can really flourish, because every organization has some need for something.
Correct.
Every F&B outlet today. I mean, gone are the days where you could have a small little, restaurant, or okay, it may have a great heritage or whatever, like in Bangalore, an MTR known for its idli dosas for 75 years. They never needed any AV, but if they open a new outlet today, they're going to have some background music, or they're going to have some digital display to show their menu. And same goes with any other type of organizations. Everybody requires, every retail store today, you buy clothing, there is always some music playing in the background. There's some kind of digital screen or display. Some of the newer clothing stores even have automation and lighting control. So when you walk into the changing room, you can actually see how your clothes look in bright light and dim light. So people are understanding the need for AV and automation. So that means there's a great opportunity. So why try to destroy that by undercutting? And so undercutting, dropping prices, discounting on every occasion sets bad precedents. So the same client comes and they realize the last 3 times you kept dropping prices, they call you for another opportunity, they will expect the same thing.
True.
And so that's the problem with the integrators. I feel many of these so-called international brands are equal to blame, because they have this, their preferred integrator, I will give a better price to this guy and higher price to somebody else. And why do they do
Favoring
that?
certain
Why do they
people,
not
yes.
have a transparent pricing system? Why do they not give a price list which anybody can use? And then everybody realizes that, yes, this is the margin I make, and I will, if I want to get a better margin, I will try to offer better level of service, or quicker delivery, or do some things. So basically sell the product at a good price.
True.
And try to charge for the extra services offered to the customer.
Do you foresee that we need an external organization to come and regulate these practices?
So it's
Or
unfortunate, it's not going to happen. I think eventually common sense has to prevail. It is right now. I think the way the industry is heading, it's going to be the survival of the fittest. Need not be like that, right? There are enough opportunities, but
Yes.
I think culturally there is a bit of a problem with the way the industry has been built over the years. Hopefully, the newer entrants will have some, greater amount of common sense, and they value their own services.
Is the scenario same in other countries, Mr. Manu?
So there could be in certain countries, maybe more
Okay.
in developing countries, but I feel that developed countries is very, very professional. People rarely undercut each other, and clients are also honest. Clients understand the value that has to be placed on installation and post-sale support. In many cases, the cost for installation and support could be, the service charges could be as high as 25 to 30% of the cost of the product sold. In the UK, integrators not only charge for the installation, they charge for any debris cleaning, removal of packing boxes. They charge for congestion fees if their vehicle has to drive into say the city, the London Central District. They charge for parking. They charge for architect meetings. That means if there are meetings between the architect and them, they charge for their time, because they say nothing comes free, and clients pay that. And in India, people expect all of this to be free, right? So delivery
I guess
is free.
it finally
Installation
comes
is free.
down to how much you value yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Only when you respect yourself,
Yes,
others also will value you.
that's true.
If you think that I'm nothing,
Yeah.
I'm willing to do anything,
Yes.
you know what the client wants.
Correct.
We are not going to get there.
Very true.
Right?
And also what happens is somebody's done the work, somebody's done the design, so people think that let me just get the order at any cost. I'll drop 10% below that person, I have not invested any time or effort. Let me just steal the order. How many times can you do that?
Correct.
Eventually, people will wise up, and then there'll be no more business to steal, and these people will eventually cease to exist.
Exactly, because every wrong practice,
Yes.
if it hits them bad, it not only hits the business, it also hits the employees and their families.
True.
So people have to look at the larger
Correct.
interest.
Yes.
And I think this scenario has to change for us to see better days.
True.
And,
Yes.
better market.
Yeah. But we are always optimists.
Mm.
We've been here now for 2 decades, so we see the opportunity is just growing. The market will expand. Great thing about India is it's the tier 2, tier 3 markets that are really picking up pace. So to be able to have teams, that's why we're making such big investments even on service. We're trying to increase our service network even in smaller towns. Somebody buys the product, buy it with peace of mind. The dealer who's selling the product sells it with peace of mind. If they have a technical challenge, we are there to handhold. So that's what we're trying to do. We've always been the mavericks, that we've always gone against the current. When other people are trying to avoid such things, we've preferred doing it the hard way, but it will take us to the destination that we've always dreamed of.
Sure. I strongly believe no hard work goes unnoticed.
True.
And somewhere, it will set benchmarks for people.
Yes.
So let's hope, very soon people realize what are the right practices. And as more and more people start following it, probably the international brands coming into India also might bring in some good practices which will influence
Sure.
people
Yeah.
to regularize.
We are hoping for that too. Yeah.
Things which we also thought about is most of these people in our industry are, the companies are closely held.
Yes. Family-run business.
Yeah, family-run business. And I don't see these processes or, the corporate culture.
True.
in many. So do you think that could be the reason why the regulations are not able to come in place?
So I think worldwide, when businesses initially in new greenfield kind of areas, businesses are usually always family run when they start off. We've always been different. ProFX is a proper structured organization where I can lose my own job if I don't do my job well.
Okay.
I mean, in the interest of the organization, I would replace myself if somebody could do a better job. I would put it that way. So this is something that everybody has a proper job. We believe in bringing in professionals. So we have clearly demarked teams. We have an HR department, a marketing department, our sales teams, installation, technical, engineering, post-sales, service, a lot of those things. So it's not just one family or 3 people sitting and trying to do it all, because that's when the service suffers eventually to the customer. So we've done it professionally. I think that's helped us in many cases, because some of these premium HNI marquee clients, which I mentioned to you about, they don't want to be dependent on this one person who may be in this business today and then 2 years later finds that, oh, I'd rather be investing in Bitcoin and not selling. So in which case, if you have a problem, who do you go to? That person no longer exists.
Right.
So some people prefer coming to us because they see the value of continuity, right? It's an organization. It's a proper structured thing with shareholders who are external to the organization, who then will evaluate and also always ensure that the best person for the job is within the company. So that's helped differentiate us. And I think there's a greater need for that to come in India. More and more individuals or mom and pop stores, I would say, partnership or proprietary businesses will find it difficult going forward. They'll find it difficult to scale up also the organization.
Correct.
You can't really grow the organization if it's going to be a close-knit and a small little establishment, because you get, you start, you're daunted by the potential risks of business. So people will have a tough time going forward.
Great. So we had wonderful conversation, Mr. Manu. And
Thank you so much.
some of the conversation, the insights were very, very useful. I'm sure the audience also will find it meaningful and useful. And thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure meeting you, Mr.
Thank you
Manu.
so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.